What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, and most of this week, we're going to be working on tanking. And in this part 1 of the series, we're going to be going over add-ons, key bindings, threat, survivability, and externals. And with that being said, let's get into it. So before we can talk about what add-ons to get, we need to talk about what application you need to get add-ons. To get the application that you need to get add-ons, go to twitch.tv and click the Get Desktop button at the top left. Once you click the Get Desktop button, download the link that's provided and get the application for Twitch. Once you've gotten the application, make sure that you make a Twitch account or you log into your Twitch client that you already have. Go to mods and go to the game that you want to play, so like World of Warcraft, and start searching for these add-ons that I'm going to talk about below. So the first and most important add-on for raiding that you're going to need is DBM or BigWigs. So it's completely your preference. Get them both and try them out and figure out which one you like the most. I like DBM. DBM is my favorite type of add-on to use, so that's what I use right now. All DBM does, or what BigWigs do, is they let you know what's going on in the fight and what to expect on the next pull. DBM also goes the extra mile and teaches you how to taunt and when to taunt and gives you suggestions on when you should be doing things. I say suggestions because inevitably in the end run, right, when it tells you to taunt, sometimes telling you to taunt isn't always right. It's mostly important to always taunt when you don't have the debuff, so if you're taunting with another tank or your tank swapping with another tank, you gotta make sure that you taunt off when your debuff falls off or right when it's about to fall off. You don't want to taunt always whenever DBM tells you to. It's not always right, but it's a good thing to help you out if you're brand new and you're starting out. Elvui or announce interrupts. So Elvui as general is an add-on that changes your UI completely, but it's an add-on pack with a bunch of cool add-ons, and one of the add-ons that's in the pack is announce interrupts. Now what announce interrupts does is announce interrupts is whenever you interrupt a target, it announces it to your party and lets them know that you interrupted. It's just an extra thing to help you out so that people know that you got the interrupt and you also know that you're the one who got the interrupt. This is really good for bonuses, so if you're playing a demon hunter, you get a bonus from interrupting a target. If you're a warrior, you get a bonus from interrupting a target. Things like that are really nice to have, really nice to understand in the game, and it's a lot easier to follow whenever you're telling everyone else that you're interrupting too. The next add-on we're going to talk about is OPie. OPie is a grouping radial action binding add-on. With this add-on, at a click of a button, a pinwheel will pop up with several different abilities or several different set commands. These can be reassigned or assigned as you wish, but the main reason why we want OPie is so that we can get raid markers. Raid markers are useful in every situation, but they're mostly used in raids. OPie allows you to quickly and easily access these raid markers on a quick and accurate pinwheel. The next add-on we're going to talk about is Tidy Plates. Tidy Plates is an add-on for your nameplates, and what this does essentially is give you overall debuffs and gives you a really good aggro tracker on every mob that you attack. It's one of my favorite add-ons, hands down, in this entire setup. So if you're going to get any add-on, get Tidy Plates, please. It's awesome, and it just makes your life a lot easier on pretty much all your characters, really. The next add-on is GTFO. GTFO is an add-on that I suggest for anybody, really. Doesn't matter if you're tanking or not. GTFO is an awesome add-on because it lets you know whenever you're in really bad stuff. So when you're standing in something, I mean, there's a lot of mobs, you're tanking a lot of things, you're gonna hear really loud and it's gonna let you know, hey, I'm saying some bad stuff. I need to get out of this quickly, and if I don't, damage is gonna happen. I'm gonna take too much damage, I'm gonna die. And that's for, the mobs themselves, that's for everyone who's around them. It's just gonna help you overall be more aware. The next add-on is Weak Auras 2. So Weak Auras 2 for me is more of an add-on than an add-on. A lot of people get confused because they think that they use Weak Auras 2 for tracking debuffs, tracking buffs, tracking abilities, tracking enemies. This is true, you can, but for me, it's a little bit too complicated to really use as a casual feature to track buffs and debuffs and enemies and whatever. I don't use it particularly for that. But what I use it for is that some people make these huge Weak Aura strings, and these Weak Aura strings are very helpful on boss fights where DBM or BigWigs does not fix or does not really go into. Weak Auras is like that slip in, that mediator between DBM and what you really need to know in the fight. So people make these really creative Weak Aura strings, and they help out significantly on the fight. Whether you're using Weak Auras to just track your debuffs or whatever, Weak Auras 2 is an excellent add-on just straight up to add anyone else's strings, anyone else's add-ons, anyone else's ideas for encounters or things that they want to track during fights or dungeons. So above all else, Weak Auras 2 is a top tier add-on and is one I highly recommend. It's one of the best ones on this list, so please grab it. The next one's a more casual add-on. It's the add-on that I use for most of the debuffs and buffs that I get throughout the game. So whenever you're tracking your debuffs on target, you're tracking the buffs on yourself, or the cooldowns that you've used, I prefer TellMeWhen by far, just because it's a very ease of use. You can just shift click the spell or the thing you want and it'll just instantly go into your TellMeWhen, and it all pretty much just auto configures for you to be able to track it very easily. And compared to Weak Auras takes a lot more finesse, takes a lot more ability to learn. If you want to put the time into Weak Auras, that's great, but if you just want to make a really simple casual TellMeWhen tracking ability, then you can just do that immediately with no issue, no rush, no problem at all. And that's why I suggest TellMeWhen, downright period easiest way to make or create your own tracked ability, tracked debuff, or tracked CD. The very last add-on I want to give a mention to is Exorsus raid tools, and the reason why Exorsus raid tools is one of the best add-ons for tanking is because you can track externals for your group and for your raid team, and it's great because knowing what externals you have available to you is amazing, and it's something that you should always strive to have an idea of what externals are available, knowing when they're going to be off cooldown and calling for them from your healer whenever you have a chance. Mostly in group and raid situations that you have a Discord or some sort of voice communication, but for the most part that's a really great add-on for that, and I really highly suggest it. So now with a 5-minute interval focused primarily on add-ons, we're going to switch over to key bindings, and this is going to be short and simple and sweet, and we're going to focus on target markers and the extra action button that is in your kit, and it's something that you should have keybound pretty soon, pretty quickly, just to make sure that it's easier for you down the line. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to press escape if you're in World of Warcraft right now. You're going to go to keybinds, and you're going to go down to target markers. Target markers is the markers you see over mobs. So Skull X Square, Diamond, Triangle, all these different markers need to be keybound for a good tank to do his job well. So I keybind all my markers F1 through F8, and this allows me to readily mark targets on the go. It allows me to direct people during bolstering weeks where they're having troubles making sure that every target in that group is at even HP, so I'm bouncing the skull around like it's some kind of weird matrimony from The Sound of Music. You just see a bopping skull or a bubble just going around on targets over and over again, and that's pretty much just directing the group's attention to that mob and saying that's important, you need to deal with that right now. And that's really important for a tank, just so that you have an idea of what your categorized priority on adds are. Skull X Square being the most base of all the markings that you're going to be using is Skull X Square for the top 3 targets, and then there on out it's just cleave and whatever else. So making sure you understand and can quickly mark these targets with these keybinds are the most important part. I use F1 through F8, but you can use any markers or any keybinds that you feel are appropriate that can fit that job very well for you. The last key binding that we need to get that's mandatory is the extra action button keybind. The extra action button keybind can be found if you press escape, go to key bindings, and on the action bars tab on the key binding section, you will find on the first row, when you first look at it, you'll see a little area called the extra action button. The best place for that for me was tilde. Tilde is the button right next to 1 to the left of it, and for me that's very convenient. And what the extra action button is whenever you pick up certain items in the game, or whenever certain mechanics become present during a fight, an extra button pops up on your screen and you have to click it manually and then press it somewhere. But if you have the extra action button already keybound and ready to go, then whenever something like that happens, you already know and have that button ready to go. And lastly, for key bindings, just keybind anything and everything that you feel that's important to your class, your spec, the situation. Make sure you have it ready to go, because the last thing you want to do is click something and then click another area and then click another area, and it just detracts from your tanking and detracts from a lot of other things. And the faster you get key bindings into your setup, the easier they're going to be throughout your entire process in World of Warcraft, tanking, DPSing, healing, any of those. Really, key binding is a very important step, and as soon as you understand that, the better off you are as a player. Moving on, let's talk about threat. Next to positioning and staying alive, threat is probably the most important part of being a tank. Generating threat has to do with how much damage you deal, as well as how fast you are hitting your really good abilities and how quick you are switching targets. Now, not all tanks are created equal. Some tanks are stronger than others, some tanks do more damage innately, some tanks are built stronger and take less damage overall, but when it comes down to it, every tank has the essential toolkits they need to become monster threat generators. When it comes down to generating threat, the most important part of your kit's going to be your weapon. Your weapon damage is so important. The eye level of your weapon and the stats protruded across your character are probably the most important important parts of your character overall when it comes to tanking. If you don't have a good weapon, your threat generation is going to be a little off compared to other tanks, compared to the rest of your group. I mean, you might be struggling against a DPS for top damage, for top threat most of the time, just because your weapon's so bad. Make sure that you're reading through your abilities. Make sure you know which one of your abilities are your highest threat generating abilities. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you look on Icy Veins. Make sure you have a good understanding of your class and your class abilities. And when we talk about in later videos, I'll talk more about class abilities and exactly get into the specifics per class. But for the moment now, you just need to know that look at your most important abilities for threat generation and focus on your highest threat generating abilities and damage. When you first pick up a mob or a boss, the first thing you should be doing is hitting your highest threat generating abilities, doing a lot of damage, popping a defensive cooldown to make sure you're okay just when you first start off, so you're not popping your mitigation abilities. You're more focused on doing a lot of damage, getting threat in the boss, getting threat in the mobs, making sure that no one else is getting damaged because of lack of threat. Make sure that one of the first abilities that you hit whenever you're attacking a new mob is a taunt. You want to start with the taunt because taunt is the thing that's going to give you the most immediate threat. It's going to guarantee that no one's going to pull off of you for a few seconds while you get your bearings. The last thing you need to know is tab target spamming. Tanks have been tab target spamming for years to maintain threat in individual mods by using single target threat generating abilities on the highest priority targets. Tab target spamming is basically hitting the tab button and swapping between each one of the mobs that you have aggroed on and hitting one of your main hard hitting abilities on that target. This process causes you to gain way more threat than you would if you were just hitting your AoE threat generating abilities and just hoping that you kept aggro on them. Constantly swapping targets and making sure that you have individual high threat on each one is going to help you keep that aggro and make sure that no one else pulls off you and no one is crying in the corner because they died because you didn't hold aggro off of them. Now to what is probably the most important part, which is survivability, which is staying alive. Above all else, it is your job to live. If you cannot live, you are not a good tank. If you die constantly, it's either one of two things are going on. Either A, you're not performing well as a tank, or B, your healers are not performing well. There's a symbiotic relationship between the healers and the tank, and later on we'll talk about externals. And in externals, it is really important that you focus on communication with your healers in order to make yourself a better survivable tank. Many guides will tell you that popping CDs needlessly is bad. These guides are right and they're wrong. See, now what you want to really do is prevent a lot of the damage. Now, if you feel like you're naked and you feel like there might be damage coming and you're not really sure of your situation, which when it comes to tanking, you should be sure of everything that's going on. You should be the most aware person in the room. But when it comes to like just a straight up feeling as a tank, if you need to pop a cooldown ever so often to make sure that you're staying regular in your group, to make sure that your HP is staying up and that your survivability and your mitigation is up to where it needs to be. Maybe you're trying to fill some holes in your gap in your rotation. Maybe there's some mitigation areas where your mitigation will not cover because there is soft points, there is open points in most tanks where you cannot mitigate 100% of the time. And if you can't, it's fine. Pop a short CD to make sure there's something there to hold you through until you have mitigation again. So when it comes down to tanking, most tanks have the three things: active mitigation, short cooldown defensives, and long cooldown defenses. Large CDs are usually used for really hard-hitting mechanics like certain boss moves that just can't be avoided, that are maybe you're a little low and you need to make sure that you have something going into a certain mechanic. Maybe the boss has a soft enrage, sort of like how Fetid does on the current raid in Old Deer. Or maybe you're out of cooldowns and you really don't have anything else to pop and you just need to pop something, and that's acceptable too. But you don't want to ever pop large cooldowns if you can supplement it with a short cooldown. So if you have a short cooldown, you usually use these more frequently, and short cooldowns are used to supplement mitigation abilities. Mitigation abilities are your first and foremost line of defense when it comes to any kind of boss encounter. You want to make sure your mitigation is up as much as you possibly can have it up, and pretty much whenever you're tanking. So like, try to not pop your mitigation abilities by accident whenever you're off tanking, because I totally don't do that. Make sure that the last thing you do whenever it comes to survivability is that you're pulling less relative to your gear level whenever you're doing content, and you're pulling more whenever you have more gear. When you're pulling stuff in dungeons and raids and stuff, make sure that you're paying attention to how fast things are dying. Make sure you're paying attention to what the DPS of your team is. Those are all very important aspects, and if you know the DPS of your team is good, then you can pull more reliably, because things will die faster, which means you have to take damage for short amounts of time, which means your CDs can cover most of the damage in the shorter period of time. But if your DPS isn't doing that great, if your group is a little slower, as your healer's a little weaker, make sure you're pulling slower, making it easy for them, because your entire goal in a dungeon or a raid is to make the entire system go smoothly, and that is your job as a tank, is to make the engine of the train go at a smooth, consistent pace. And if you are constantly overpulling and constantly dying, then you are making that engine stagnate, stutter, and fall off the tracks. Likewise, if you're pulling too slow, then your team team's gonna get bored, the performance of your raid's gonna go down, and everything else is gonna go kind of bad just in general. If your group can handle the pulls, then you should do the pulls. Gauging this is the most important part, and later on in more videos that I make, we will talk more about gauging your group, but for right now, just understand that that is something you need to keep in mind. Alright guys, for the last part of this video, let's talk about the final and most important part of communication when it comes to you and your healers: externals. Now, when you're mitigating as a tank, there are natural gaps in your rotation that you need to fill. And the way you fill those natural gaps is with your own cooldowns that you have at your disposal, but also the external cooldowns from your healers. And like we talked about earlier in the add-on section, if you keep Exorsus raid tools up to date and you're always tracking the externals of your healers, the cooldowns of your healers, like Life Cocoon, like Pain Suppression, tracking these things will help you become a better tank overall. If your healers don't have to watch after you every 2 seconds and don't have to guess when to pop their cooldowns on you, and you're actively communicating with them on when you need the cooldowns, it's going to help you overall be way better as a tank. If your healers aren't just throwing all their mitigations on you all of a sudden for no reason, you're going to have that when you actually need it. Having the proper keybinds and add-ons, as well as having a good understanding of threat, survivability, and externals, are going to make you a far better tank than your predecessors and your peers. I really hope you guys liked the video. If you did, leave a like down below, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Please, please, please give this some love. Share it with your friends on Twitter. Let people know what you think about it. You know, all the good YouTube stuff. And don't forget to subscribe. I love you guys so much. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. I have been AmShady. I've been Amwrath. I've been everything that I am, and peace.
I'm good.